Hello and welcome dear learners to the NPTEL course on Nutritional Epidemiology, a way towards a healthy living. In the module 1, the foundations and principles of nutritional epidemiology for the chapter 4, we will be talking about the nutrition transition and changing dietary patterns, double burden of malnutrition, that is undernutrition and overnutrition, role of nutrition in maternal and child health, nutrition and non-communicable diseases, impact of nutrition on immunity and infectious diseases, vulnerable populations and nutritional risk, equity and disparities in population nutrition. For the nutrition transition, which refers to the large-scale shifts in dietary intake and energy expenditure patterns which is associated with economic development, urbanization, globalization and changes in the food system. So nutrition transition is being shifted from a traditional plant-based diets rich in whole grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables. This has been seen as a driver for nutrition transition. Increased consumption of ultra-processed food, saturated fats, added sugar and sodium has been seen as an important and reason for the drivers. Reduced physical activity due to the mechanization and sedentary lifestyle fuels for nutrition transition. The consequences of these leads to the dietary changes that have led to rising prevalence of overweight, that is obesity, and diet-related non-communicable diseases, even in low and middle income countries. Importantly, nutrition transition often occurs unevenly within populations, exacerbating socioeconomic and regional disparities in diet quality and health outcomes. The double burden of malnutrition, which comprises to undernutrition and overnutrition. The double burden of malnutrition describes the coexistence of undernutrition as well as overnutrition, which we can see that undernutrition which comes with stunting, wasting, underweight of micronutrients and deficiencies, where you can see how it represents to an individual. Where versus on the other side, there is an overnutrition which reflects in overweight, obesity and diet-related non-communicable disease, where the representation can be seen with a high body weight. The double burden of malnutrition, that is undernutrition and overnutrition phenomena, can occur both at individual level, at an household level and which can be seen at a population level. At an individual level, it can be an early life undernutrition followed by an adult obesity, where the signs and symptoms can be reflected at an individual person level. At an household level, it can be seen as an undernourished children and sometimes an overweighted adults, where in the population level we can find the country facing both child undernutrition as well as adult obesity. Even in India, currently we have a double burden of malnutrition. The double burden reflects structural inequalities, poor diet quality and exposure to energy dense but nutrient poor foods. The role of nutrition in maternal child health. It plays a very important role. Nutrition during pregnancy, nutrition during infancy and early childhood. It is very important that it is critical for survival, growth, cognitive development and long-term health. It is depicted into the picture that shows that maternal health is currently related with nutrition. So the maternal nutrients is very important part to understand, where in the continuation the infant and young child feeding, that is IYCF practices, are one very important to give the child in its early infancy, and it leads to the early childhood the development problems. In the first 1000 days of life, it is very important that you need to concentrate on the nutrition part, which reflects the coming age of the child. From a population health perspective, improving maternal and child health nutrition is one of the most cost-effective public health interventions with intergenerational benefits and for the coming ages. Nutrition and its association with NCDs. Unhealthy diet are among the leading risk factors for non-communicable disease. It can be cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer and hypertension, which are very common in our country. Diet-related non-communicable disease is associated with dietary factors, that is for high processed food intake, which can lead to obesity, that is a body mass index more than 30, which can lead to type 2 diabetes. Low fruit and vegetable consumption can lead to high blood pressure and can lead to cardiovascular disease, which has a close connection of this. Excess sugar and sodium can lead to elevated cholesterol and can lead to certain types of cancers. Unhealthy fats is related to insulin resistance and can lead to chronic kidney disease condition. So it is very important that there is a great link to be identified with the food, the nutrition part, and the disease condition. That is the non-communicable disease that we are seeing, which are increasing in the current time. So diet is related to non-communicable disease. Population level dietary risks are influenced by food environments, the food pricing, the food marketing, and food policy framework. What is the impact of nutrition on immunity and infectious disease? When we come across different infectious disease conditions, we identify that nutrition plays a crucial role in developing the immune function and also the resistance to the infection. A strong immune function which supports innate and adaptive immunity. It maintains skin and gut barrier. It enhances the antibody and immune cell production. If a weakened immune system is there, it impairs the cell medication immunity. It reduces the response to pathogens and vaccines, which in a way reflects to a weaker immunity. If you maintain an adequate diet, which reduces the susceptibility to infection where the lower risk of respiratory and diarrheal infection. It also gives a faster recovery and reduces the severity or occurrence of the disease condition. Where if there is a weaker immunity, it increases the infection risk and severity. Frequently, a person gets ill and severe and prolonged infection can be taken over there. There is always a higher morbidity and also chances of mortality. So nutrition infection cycle is something which gives from undernutrition to immunity, infection and worsened nutritional status, where you need to concentrate more on your gut health, which is the diet microbe immune interaction. Micronutrients like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, also the zinc, iron and selenium, which are very important component into the micronutrient. In the macronutrient, it is very important to concentrate on protein and energy, which gives the immune cell synthesis. So, nutrition plays a crucial role in immune function and resistance to the infection. The impact of nutrition on immunity and infectious diseases. There is a vicious cycle which is being seen with infection and undernutrition. If you see the undernutrition, that is micronutrient deficiencies and wasting, there is a reflection of weakened immunity, damaged gut and impaired growth, increased susceptibility and severity of infection which leads to diarrhea, pneumonia and measles. The worsening nutritional status reflects to weight loss, that is the further deficiencies in the body are developed. Infection impacts the nutrient, which can give poor appetite, nutrient loss, that is more seen in diarrhea, malabsorption, that is IBS, and fever, that is the increased need of nutrition. So the long-term consequences gives impaired development as a very important thing, and a chronic disease condition which can be leading sometimes to increased morbidity and can finally lead to mortality, that is death. On the other side, we can see the vicious cycle of infection with overnutrition, that is obesity, where we find overnutrition, which is more for obesity, excess adipose tissue in the body, where the chronic low-grade inflammation, metabolic dysfunctions, impaired immune cell function, which can lead to a number of health conditions to an individual. Increased susceptibility and severity of infection, which gives more frequent infection in an obese person. Worsened outcomes can lead to conditions like influenza or even COVID-19 or different respiratory infections. Further, the adipose tissue gain and metabolic derangement can lead to reduced physical activity, altered appetite, and vicious cycles continues to give more infection. Infection can further worsen the metabolic dysfunction, which can lead to hypergravida and can also increase insulin resistance and further inflammation. The long-term consequences can risk to diabetes too, and cardiovascular disease, disability, and premature death of a child. So this all leads to the condition which are very important and interlinked actually for the disease condition, infection, and your diet. So if we do understand the impact of nutrition on immunity and infectious disease condition, this is a very vicious cycle. Now we'll be talking about the vulnerable population and nutritional risk. Certain populations face heightened nutritional vulnerability, particularly due to biological, social, and environmental factors. If we do talk about the vulnerable population, it is particularly the infants and young children who are extremely vulnerable, particularly for nutritional vulnerability. Next comes the pregnant women and lactating women, which needs to be concentrated to be seen as the second next vulnerable population. The third and very important is the older adults, where we need to concentrate on their nutrition. The low socio-economic household contributes to the fourth and very important vulnerable population group. Indigenous and marginalized communities are one to be targeted to see that they are nutritional vulnerable. And the populations who are affected by the conflict, climate change, displacement, war, inundations of floods, and all types of famines also are affected and to be seen as the vulnerable population. Nutritional risk among these groups is shaped by food insecurity, limited access to health services, their poor living condition, and the social exclusion. Equity and disparities in population nutrition. Nutrition inequities arise from systematic differences in access to healthy food. Also, access to healthcare, education, income, and safe environment. These all disparities contribute to unequal health outcomes across the socioeconomic, gender, geographic, and ethnic groups. Food deserts, swamps, disadvantaged areas may lack fresh deserts or to be flooded with cheap, unhealthy fast food swamps, which gives the great reason of equity. The equity gap in many countries leads to stunting gap between the wealthiest and the poorest quintiles, which is being seen very massive, often exceeding 25 to 30%, which is very difficult to understand how it really contributes to. The equity focused nutritional approaches, which is very important to understand for the population where we need to address the social determinants. We need to tackle on the poverty, we need to tackle on the educational front, improve their housing and solve the problems of employment, where it is more on their workplaces and the school that the social determinants need to be addressed. On ensuring the affordability and availability for the food, subsidies need to be provided. Local market needs to be focused more on improving the nutritional approaches and food banks for the purpose actually where in times when it needs, this food bank can help to reduce the equity part. Designing culturally appropriate interventions with respect to community engagement, which is being seen as a very important way to deal with the issue of equity and disparities in population nutrition. Traditional recipes can also be seen as a boon in designing culturally appropriate interventions. Especially language access can make more ease to understand and communicate to deal with the interventions which can help to reduce the disparity. Also, integrating nutrition into broader policies. At a country level, it is very important that the health system, social protection and development plan need to inculcate or to add nutritional approaches which reduce the equity part and can improve to reduce the disparities among this, which can improve or can lead to better health outcomes. So in summary to this chapter, nutrition and population health are closely interconnected. As dietary pattern influence growth, immunity, disease risk, and overall well-being across the life course. Rapid nutrition transition has led to a double burden of undernutrition and overnutrition within the population. Even this problem is being faced by our country. The poor quality diet contributes significantly to non-communicable disease, diabetes, heart diseases, and cancer, while also affecting vulnerability to the infection and making the condition more worsen. Nutritional risks are unequally distributed, with disadvantaged groups experiencing the greatest burden. Addressing population nutrition therefore requires life course, multi-sectoral and equity-focused public health approaches. So with this, we come an end to this chapter, and there are few important references that can be seen to refer to understand this topic in more detail. So thank you very much.